pornography is a very new phenomenon in our culture in the current form that it takes, in the sense that everyone that has one of these things in their pocket can find anything almost immediately, and the access to everything that everyone has all of a sudden is a very, very new thing. And so what that means is, and I'm sure there are stats that we can find later, but the age at which people are encountering pornography for the first time is scarily low. And what that does to a young brain, I don't think we quite really understand yet.
And last episode I talked about, the porn on the walls of my home.
Yes.
In the form of Dad's artwork, because he's an artist, and nude pictures of Mum was all over the wall, and I just thought that was normal. And didn't all mothers have paintings of themselves, their boobs and their bush on the wall? And it's an interesting thing, because I also remember my first so I never thought that was porn because I didn't know what porn was. But I remember finding in Dad's studio a pile of Playboy magazines. And I can't remember how old I was, but I would have been pretty little, I think. And flicking through the pages and seeing pictures of nude girls. But they were never images of men and women having sex like the stuff that young people are seeing these days. They were just those classic Hugh Hefner, nude, voluptuous women, right? A little bit like, almost like young girls are seeing today, we all see today on a billboard advertising a perfume.
Or underwear.
Or
something.
underwear. Yeah, that's exactly right. Or anything, really. The Kardashians have made a fortune out of, having half-nude bodies, a little bit like we used to see in Playboy back in the 70s, And you remember that image, that famous image of Marilyn Monroe draped out on red velvet, and she's laying back, and I think it's actually a beautiful photograph of her.
Yeah.
Of her beautiful slender body, and one leg's covering her private parts, and you see a bit boobs, and it's a really beautiful shot of her body, and that was as ugly as it really got back then, to my knowledge. I mean, correct me if I've got that completely wrong and I'm naive, but today it's the violence and the aggression of porn, and the me and all that shit that is absolutely devastating, I would imagine, to the human brain and to our precious kids that are accessing this shit.
I think, and this is, I could well, future Jonty could well have covered this as well, but I think because this is a quote-unquote church podcast as well, I want to say that when we're talking about porn in this way, we're not coming at it from this is inherently good or this is inherently bad, like taking any moral stance on it necessarily. We're purely just talking about it in a really honest way. And because, as we sort of spoke about last week, this idea that the church shouldn't talk about sex or doesn't talk about sex is actually more unhelpful than, I think, and a lot of the time the heart is in the right place there. But yeah, and just carrying on from that, I don't know, I can't speak with any authority on this, but my suspicion would be that more violent pornography may well have been around earlier.
Right.
But the important thing is that now with the internet, it's readily available, as is every type of pornography you could think of.
Yeah.
You can find it just with your two thumbs on your phone. Which is important for, if we're going to speak on behalf of the church, it's important to acknowledge that and actually start a conversation. Because, and I want to throw over to you here, Julie, to see what you think, we need to acknowledge that kids, not just teenagers, but kids are finding pornography, even if they don't know what it is, kind of like what you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
So I guess, Jules, what's your experience with in this area? Like, have you come across children or young people having been affected by pornography?
Yeah, definitely. I think science is only just realising the neurological repercussions of porn. And as you said, Jonty, the difference here is it's not so much porn's a new thing, it's the access through the internet. Yeah, so that's the difference here. But scientifically, we know that it's causing a lot of mental health problems and a lot of sexual dysfunction. That's for people who are chronic porn users. I mean, apart from noticing the sexualised behaviours of youngsters at school, but in my private practice, most definitely with young adults, finding it difficult to get an erection, have an orgasm, and when that human need comes along, like for desire hits, they very often grab the phone, the laptop.
Yeah.
And so the idea of them being able to be sexually aroused and satisfied, that's where they're getting it. So when they go to their real life partner, they find it difficult, they find it hard. And the brain's just doing what the brain does. So it's as you said before, it's not a moral standpoint platform at all. It's just the brain's doing what it does, and that's because it's of plasticity, and it's its ability to change and adapt with experience. And so the dopamine reward system becomes habituated. So it's not unlike substance abuse. It's very similar. Because, you know, what might have got you into a state where you're like, oh, I feel really relaxed now, and you've had 3 glasses of wine, a couple of years later it might be 2 bottles to get that same, because the brain, habituates. So, and so I have had clients come in and not understand why they can't, you know, they're not getting sexually aroused anymore by their by their partner. So it's quite liberating for them when they understand what the brain's doing, because it's not they're a bad person or anything like that. It's just the brain's doing what it's geared to do, and it remembers. The brain remembers, stores where you got your pleasure from, where you got your food from. So it's there. So it reverts to that. It's by watching. That's what I need to do. But of course, because it habituates, it needs more and more and more. And the porn industry, they know this because that's why they're upping the ante. You know what I mean?
Yep.
They have to do more and more, like the violence.
And extreme behaviours, I suppose, that are outside what I'd call the normal bedroom. Potentially. And again, I'm not casting any judgment. If you like it harder, deeper, stronger, meaner.
Don't look at me.
I'm just saying, knock yourselves out, people. You just go hard as long as it's consensual. But the worry for me is the children, is the access to the kids. I mean, consenting adults is one thing, totally another story. But it's the children.
And it's a real lack of education around it. And I think part of that is because it is such a new thing. It's as old as the internet, which is still very new, and we're still figuring out exactly, and through research, but through education, all these different things, we're still actually not 100% caught up on how instant access to everything all the time affects how we interface with information, let alone process it, and how that affects our behaviour. So, in the same way that education around drugs is really important, because just simply saying don't do them, why? Oh, they're bad. That's not enough, because people will do drugs. People always have done drugs, and people will continue to do drugs. And it's not about just saying no, don't do it, because when those people then go and do it, they're not educated and equipped to encounter those situations, and that's how people get hurt and how tragedies happen. And so it's the same thing with pornography, and it's the same thing. Everyone that goes through schooling in Australia has some form of sex education. it's been a long time since I was in primary school, but I certainly have no memory of being taught about what porn was when I was in primary school.
No, I don't think they actually teach it, you know. About,
I'd have to check that.
Yeah,
but
do you know, Julie, if they're
No, I
teaching?
don't. I can't say for sure, but I haven't come across any curriculum where they're discussing pornography.
I do remember the condom on the banana, which was
Oh,
very
Yeah,
entertaining.
everyone remembers that one.
Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, isn't it?